Thank you so much again for doing this. So as we mentioned, this will focus on best practices and innovative strategies. Could you just, you've done so much work on this issue at UNFPA, could you tell us what are the most prevalent features of violence against women that you are encountering?
In our work as the United Nations Population Fund, we certainly deal with violence against women in conflict situations, in humanitarian crisis of different sorts, including natural disaster, and certainly domestic violence to a certain extent, but we're very much focused on what happens in refugee camps and at the time of war. And it's pretty brutal. And part of it is some of the cases that at least we face. Not only is it multiple rape, pregnancies that are a result of that, where women are not accepted by their families after they don't take them in anymore. And so you end up not with one problem of a really burned out, hurt woman, but also a child who's in many ways is unwanted. And so working with victims is quite important, but also working with health personnel, because sometimes they don't treat them well either. They go to a clinic and they don't get the necessary help and so on. And so lots of our work is trying to get that kind of support to women. One is to prevent it from happening, if that is possible, though in wars, in conflicts, it's very difficult. And the second one, of course, is to establish psychosocial services, as well as health services, especially sexual and reproductive health services that will help women to deal with the aftermath of the rape that takes place. Also, HIV is linked. One of the stories says that in Rwanda, 1/3 of the women who were raped eventually died of HIV. And so it's really a multiple level of a problem that women face as a result of an act of aggression that destroys all her life for the rest of her life. But there is also issues of rape in the society, in a normal setting, and so on. And one interesting case is in Mauritania, where a midwife started a campaign on her own, and she really moved with it, basically because the law did not recognize rape and did not, women were treated who came to report that they were raped, were not treated with respect, were not believed. They were accused of really, they are the cause of it and bringing it on themselves and so on. So she started a big campaign to get not only women but also men to work together to help them change the laws that will protect women, and if she's raped, to declare zero tolerance for perpetrators and to be able to bring the perpetrators to justice. The campaign is still ongoing. But there is change by the fact that there are more men joining this wonderful midwife. Her name is Zainabu. And of course, getting judges and medical doctors and nurses and midwives to join her was a great experience. So that's one really highlights of how community organization makes a big difference. It doesn't all have to come from the top. Laws are important, but they're not sufficient, because laws are at the national level, but the violation of women is at the community level. And you need to make the link between what happens at the community level and the laws that are put in place at the national level.
Thank you. And what best practices would you suggest at the community level, for example?
Well, certainly understanding the context and the culture is a very important part of empowerment, because you can't change anything if you don't understand it. You can't change anything if you don't build on the leadership that is available in the communities. And so many of what we promote is that learning about culture and knowing that culture is not monolithic. It's not all ugly. There are very good things in cultures that can be utilized to bring about change, and that this change has to be towards human rights. So what we're saying is we have to access cultural values that are positive in order to bring change that is in line with human rights. And not many people really, this is still a very controversial area, because people think once you speak about culture, you are accepting what's there, and we're saying no. And I'll give you an example, the value of a mother in a society. Many societies accept verbally, and they do idealize a mother in many ways, and yet the same society might have maternal mortality, high rate of women dying while giving birth. So you have both values. So how can you access the value of a mother to show that the mother is intrinsic to the family, intrinsic to the community, and that if she is empowered to be healthy, to be educated, to be able to go to the clinic, to be able to determine the number and spacing of her family through family planning, that's the best thing for her as a human being. It's her human right, but also it has impact on the family as well. But this means you've got to get her husband also on the same line. So engaging men at the community, they are the gatekeepers. And so we've got to engage men in order for them to work with women to bring about change.
A lot of people say, are sensitive about changing culture, even the positive aspects. What would you say to them? How can we best use culture to eliminate violence?
Well, culture is dynamic. We make culture, people make culture, and people can change culture. And so if we see it as a dynamic force that changes over time, then we would be able to change the practices that violate women's rights into a human rights context. But it does take contesting the values that are wrong, dialoguing and bringing about community to sit together and look at these issues, and then to say, how do we move together to bring about this change? It's a process. It's not easy. It takes a long time, but it has to be done if we want to ensure that human rights are really basics as part of everyday life. That's the only way.
Thank you so much. And just one final question. As you know, it's the 10th anniversary of WLP. Is there any message you would like to give to the organization or to the partnership, to the 20 organizations?
Well, first, one has to congratulate the Women Learning Partnership for its 10th anniversary. It has done a great deal. And what it has done is really focused on communities. And that's the whole heart of change. It has worked to ensure that human rights are well articulated, but it has brought that national, international principles and brought it down to a level that the women can interpret it in their own private lives. How can I, in my own context, ensure human rights for me and my daughter and my neighbor and so on? And I think this is what's one of the strengths of the WLP in working with women to give them the skills and the knowledge to bring about this change that they want in their lives.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate your time. You've always been so generous.
No.
And we're really grateful.
Yes.
Could we just ask you to say your name?
Thoraya Obaid, Executive Director, United Nations Population Fund.